everyone, welcome to StormCrows TV, the channel where two lit chicks talk about all things reading and writing. I'm Emily.
And I'm Allegra. Today we're continuing our read-along of A Game of Thrones, the first book in George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire series.
So for those of you who are just joining us, the way this works is, well, Allegra, she's our resident expert on the series. She's read it 1 billion times at least, and will probably read it 1 billion more before the end of this decade.
This is Emily's first time reading it, and she's only vaguely familiar with the TV show somehow.
I didn't have HBO. And from what I've heard, after season 8, that might have been a good thing.
What's season 8? The show ended in season 5. It was really sad. But we did miss a question from Septa Shayna in our last episode, so real quick, rewind. It was about Daenerys' wedding gifts, and what specifically did you think about them, Em? To review, everyone, it's a flashy set of 3 dragon eggs, an assorted material from Illyrio, Westerosi books from Jorah, and the Silver Horse from Drogo. What significance do you happen to see to them?
I have seen and been exposed enough to HBO, and that I know she does get her dragons and is the mother of dragons, and where are my dragons, and I will take what is mine with fire and blood. So like I do know that the eggs are significant. They're not just, Fabergé eggs meant to sit on a mantelpiece forever and be pretty.
The symbolism to them, though, is kind of interesting because Jorah's giving her Westeros, which is the history of where she thinks she's from. Drogo is giving her, as she says, giving her the wind. And then Illyrio is also giving her, like, a piece to her past, like Jorah is with these dragon eggs. Whether or not you can also read into it the whole Blackfire conspiracy going on.
Again, as the noob, I kind of take it very surface right now. Just, at the moment, it just seems like well, that's going to be handy later.
Yeah, definitely. So this episode, we read Tyrion 2, Catelyn, sorry. Everyone, I was a fan, before the TV show happened. Even the audiobooks used to have, 6 different pronunciations for different names. Anyway, and then Sansa 1, which is my baby, my favorite, Sansa. So, Em, you want to give us the newbie summary for all of that?
Okay, so, last time we saw Tyrion, he was being the only responsible diplomat in Westeros and was going to the wall with Jolly John and resting bitch-face Benjen. The Stark bro isn't super thrilled about it, not so much because Tyrion can't actually lend a hand in surviving the trip, but because he's a lame Lannister. JJ doesn't seem to care much about him either because Tyrion teases him about the wall and how serving at the wall isn't a noble calling at all. Exhibit A, the asshole's traveling with us. JJ believes it, but that doesn't mean he likes it. Ghost doesn't either, and in a complete 180 from letting the good Lannister pet him, he makes him bleed. But what's a little blood spilled between the family rejects? They actually manage to somewhat seem friendly at the end, but not before we learn about Tyrion being a complete fangirl about dragons and fire and foreshadowing. Meanwhile, catatonic Catelyn is still grieving at Bran's bedside. Nothing else matters. Oh, there's household shit needs to get done? Don't care. Need me to sort out the stables? I couldn't give 2 shits about the damn horses. Only Bran matters. Yeah, not her 3-year-old son who has no idea how to cope with what's going on, and definitely not the 14-year-old who's suddenly having to be the boss. He's doing a great job, by the way. I guess in a way, though, Catelyn's mad grief is a goodish thing. It keeps Bran from being stabby-stabbed, though she totally messes up her fingers. She doesn't lose them, which, considering the dagger was Valyrian steel, and I've been told how effing boss that is supposed to be, it makes me wonder exactly how she didn't lose at least one. But that's not important. Cat is drugged for the next couple of days and wakes up with a bit more sense. Somehow. She decides to reveal to a couple more people that the Lannisters probably killed Jon Arryn, and maybe wanted Bran dead too, because she may suck at running a household and being a mother. But she can put 2 and 2 together, damn it. And obviously this means the only thing left to do is go to King's Landing herself to warn Ned. Sound smart, Catelyn. Solid plan. And then you have Sansa. Oh, sweet Sansa. Honestly, I'm surprised Sansa is so well adjusted, all things considered. Have you met her parents? 'Cause at this point I'm not sure she has. All she wants is for things to go well, to impress her betrothed, and not be such a spaz when greeted with tongueless dread knights. Same, Sansa. Same. It'd help, of course, if her sister wasn't such a tit, which she is. Honestly, I would ask who the F taught Arya how to court, but then I remembered. Not a damn person. It's almost unbelievable how spectacularly Arya manages to screw up her sister's date-not-date with the future king of Westeros. Shouldn't a 9-year-old know attacking a prince with a stick is generally frowned upon in polite society? At least her direwolf has an excuse in that, well, it's a direwolf and not a human person. But damn, Arya, way to not be a wingman. The end.
I have a lot of questions about childcare in Winterfell, but So let's start with Tyrion anyway.
I know I did just say that I don't know enough to get into tinfoil hat theories just yet, but after reading this chapter, I really do think Tyrion is a Targaryen. Just based on the everything about that chapter, because you have the obsession with the fire and the dragon skeletons, and the imagery of the large, impressive dragons, and then the small, stunted, deformed dragons. Like, the parallel there felt too coincidental. I kind of felt like Martin was hitting me over the head with it.
And of course, he's talking to Jon. We got like the books about dragons, the history lesson about the Field of Fire, where Aegon basically took out all of the Reach and a good chunk of the Lannister men. I like that Tyrion also calls it that the Night's Watch has been chosen for Jon, even though Jon himself doesn't quite realize it yet.
I feel so sad for Jon in this chapter because I feel like he may not realize it fully, but he's getting the picture. He seems so much smarter than Ned, and he's only 14. Like, how is this kid putting things together faster than him?
Between him in this chapter and then Rob in the next, the 14-year-old boys are definitely somehow the adults in the North.
I do like this rivalry, not rivalry, that's going on between him and Tyrion. You get the sense Tyrion likes to tease him, but then feels guilty about it.
Yeah, like it's just a little too easy.
But back to Tyrion being a Targaryen, I guess one of the things that kind of makes me lean into that, aside from the symbols I just talked about, in the chapter before, Ned talks about how the Lannisters turned on the king. And, okay, so, like, if Tywin thought that his wife cheated on him with a Targaryen, that might have been what pushed him over the edge. Like, I'm done. And maybe that's why he emotionally rejects Tyrion. Not because he's disfigured or seems different, but it's actually just because he's a bastard and he had to claim him so he wouldn't look bad.
Yeah. And we'll definitely get more into, I think, some of the Lannister family dynamics as Tyrion goes on. There was a really cool thing I did just notice this time through. When Jon and Tyrion get back to camp, Benjen walks out of a tent and goes, "I thought the others had gotten you." You know, telling Jon specifically, "Don't go wandering off." And I thought it was kind of a callback to the idea that they might be looking for a Stark or something, or that the others definitely might have gotten people.
It was the first time we've heard them mentioned in a while. But Benjen's a dick. I mean, I love that about him. You know that's not enough to turn me off to a character, but man, what a dick.
Yeah, he's really not a fan of having to have Tyrion on this trip, whether it's just general Lannister loathing or... Yeah, I don't actually ever know why specifically Benjen hates Lannister so much, except possibly he's picked up on Ned's distrust of them.
What I do like, though, is Benjen was like, "Here, I'm going to offer you this," expecting him to refuse the blanket because it wasn't, like, up to standard.
Yeah.
And Tyrion going, "Well, I'm not an idiot, thanks." But, like, what I like about that is, you know, when they're heading back to camp, Tyrion and Jon, and Tyrion's struggling with all the obstacles in the terrain, and Jon is like, "Hey, let me help you." And Tyrion's like, "No, I'll make my own way. I can do this." So it's like there's some pride there in him having to be like, "Look, I've made my own way my whole life." Yet at the same time, there was that line of Lannisters never refuse what is offered.
Yeah.
But I'm like, you just refused help. So I guess sometimes you refuse what is offered.
Unless, yeah. And again, you know, the rivalry, at least like mostly friendly rivalry in this, because they do have the really tense moment when Ghost tries to eat Tyrion, or considers it, and then Jon calls him off. Maybe it's some leftover bits from when George R. Martin, meant to set up a Tyrion and Jon love triangle with Arya, which I still just, how, what, why, no.
Don't think about it.
That's, again, with an illustration of when you plan a book versus when you're writing the book, things go awry.
We don't know that at all. Everything has always gone according to plan when we have written books.
I hadn't paid attention to the mechanics of it before, but the way he is dropping hints about the dragons, you know, that big chunk with Tyrion just now, it's a lot, but also he related it to what the character is doing, so it didn't feel horrendously like an info dump.
Right.
Because, you know, Tyrion is reading a book about dragons in history. He would think about dragons in history. Makes sense to me. I'm finding that very useful as like a guide of how to do this if you're going to write a big epic fantasy with tons and tons of backstory.
Yeah, it's the what J.R.R. Tolkien should have done manual.
Okay, Catelyn.
I know people like her.
Mhm.
I am not one of those people. And I don't want it to become my shtick, but I mean, she really is just awful.
As I've said before, I don't actually despise Catelyn in later books, but I have never liked her in a Game of Thrones. And again, I've never figured out if it's Martin struggling to write her or what happened. Her personality, the way it comes across to me, she just rings hollow or terrible. She's obviously grief-stricken and guilt-stricken about Bran's fall, but you have a 3-year-old who, whether due to GRRM's total brain freeze or something, I don't know, but there's no designated caregiver for this 3-year-old except apparently for Rob. So like you have been his primary caregiver and you just drop it.
We discussed this not too long ago about like, okay, we don't have kids. I don't understand a grief that a mother would feel when their child is not well. But again, as you said, Bran's not her only kid. And 2 of your kids have left with Ned, but you have 2 other kids who are not adjusting well to the well, one of them is, but you know, he still needs help. He needs guidance. Like the whole point of you staying back was to guide him. You know, be grief-stricken, but to the point of madness. I think that's where I kind of draw the line. Like it didn't make sense to me that she was mourning like that.
Yeah, I mean, if the kid had actually died, I think I would give it more credence, but he's out of immediate danger. He's just in a like coma, but the maester's telling you he's not going to die. It's just going to take him a while to heal. And you still have a 3-year-old, let alone your 13-year-old, 14-year-old who is struggling to pick up not only his father's job, but now your job on a skeleton staff. Then to compound it was that line she's got later in it where then Ned went south anyway, completely choosing, even though he said he couldn't choose. And I'm like, but you're the reason he went south to start with. Like, her complete disconnect from any kind. None of this is my fault at all. Ned just chose it and I'm mad at him. Like,
yeah, that did kind of piss me off.
I mean,
like,
kind of realistic. I've met girls like that, but on the other hand,
I don't know. I guess my issue with this chapter, more than Catelyn as a character, is I don't know. This felt like plot hole spackle to me. Catelyn was irrationally grieving, and that irrational grief is what saved Bran, and then now she's able to put everything together now that rationality is back after miraculously not losing any of her fingers from Valyrian steel. I get that you're gonna think someone tried to kill Bran, especially after an assassin came in, but to conveniently jump to Jaime Lannister.
honestly, that part doesn't bother me as much because she has obviously drunk the Kool-Aid about we hate Lannisters. So, like, the irrational level of anti-Lannister propaganda, I figured if she didn't latch onto Jaime, she'd have latched onto Cersei or Tyrion. And because
I feel like it would have made sense if it was just the Lannisters put someone up to it or one of their guards. I don't know that I would have jumped to Jaime must have taken care of him himself because kind of seems small fish.
Yeah, what I kind of figured, or what I had always personally thought of whenever she goes off about it being Jaime, is because if it had been Jaime, she would have gone off on Tyrion. Because basically what she's thinking is that her son overheard probably a plot to kill Robert or something. Some sort of nefarious Lannister plan. And she's had Ned bitching this entire time about Robert trying to make Jaime Lannister Warden of the East.
Mm-hmm.
As well as being heir to the West. So, like, kind of makes sense that if there is going to be some Lannister overreach, in her mind it would be coming from Jaime. Because she's an idiot and hasn't looked for 5 minutes at Cersei. Because no one has yet.
Her idiocy essentially lucked her into a stroke of brilliance.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, because think about it. If it hadn't very specifically been Jaime, and we weren't seeing any of the other stuff, like, he's just the shiniest candidate. He's your biggest rival as far as is in your head. At least that's how I always read it. Like, I just figured she just lucks into being right, even though she's really not right about like 80% of it. She only happened to get the right person. Also, what played into it, I think, too, is the fact that they're going to think Lannister because that damn stupid dagger is Dragonbone, which you just had Tyrion in the previous chapter going off of on about how rare it is and how prized by the Dothraki and all this stuff. And Valyrian steel, which is also hella expensive and almost impossible to come by. So it had to be somebody with some serious cash to throw that dagger into a rando's hand. And who has serious mega cash? Lannisters.
So how did she not lose her fingers?
That's plot hole spackle.
I mean, I have accidentally cut myself with, like, a butter knife. A butter knife on a scale of 1 to Valyrian steel, I would say, is like a -3.
Yes.
So I'm just saying, like, don't ask, but I have seen people lose fingers. And I've seen them lose fingers on, like, stupid things. She probably has nimble, thin little fingers, and how are they there? I don't know why I'm so fixated on this.
Maybe it was because it was a real quick grab on her part before the she thinks it was a long time because her fingers were trying to get cut off, but, you know, it wasn't actually that long before the direwolf showed up.
The direwolves that she wanted killed before.
Yeah, right? Like, she wants the direwolves dead and demands Robb kill them if it has to shut them up before she learns to appreciate them the hard way.
3 seconds later.
I appreciate when Catelyn returned to sanity, and I get he was trying to show the outrageousness of grief and guilt and how toxic and crazy it can get. I have so little ability to empathize with Catelyn until probably books 2 and 3. I find her way more palatable.
Now, I did try to empathize with her. I sat back and went, am I being too hard on her? Let me try and see this through her eyes. And yeah, okay. If someone I loved was very sick and they were in a coma, yeah, I would go to the hospital often. I would go sit with them. But there's also a mentality of, I still have to live my life. And I know this because my grandfather was very sick, and I was very close with my grandfather. And I would sit with him, but I still had to live my life. I couldn't just give up every moment of my time to sit with him. I had a job. I had other people that were depending on me. And I tried. I did try. So, like, as far as, like, not being able to empathize with her, I did try to empathize. And I empathized to a point. Like, yeah, sit with your kid. Sit up with him. Cry for him, feel guilty. Don't be guilty, but feel guilty. But you can't let that consume you.
I always think of it like, so when I was little, like about 5 was the first time I came down with pneumonia, and it was like double pneumonia, really, really, really bad. It's probably a good chunk of why I have severe asthma today. Like, that level of badness happened. And they had to life flight me from our home in the middle of nowhere to Children's Mercy. Like, it was ugly. My grandparents got called in. Aunts and uncles got called in. And my parents took turns sitting with me and swapped out with my other family members and friends because we were farmers. Like, you know, the cows and the sheep and the pigs didn't stop needing fed because I was trying to die on them. And to me, it's like, yeah, my parents felt hella guilty because they took, you know, it was a cold and then it was suddenly a little bit worse and then it was not. And they had, you know, there's the horrible guilt with that you didn't get the kid before double pneumonia set in. But they did the best they could. But they were still trying to be very conscious of their livelihood, their farm, the rest of our family. And I look at Catelyn, and she just checks out at everything, including her other children. And I was an only child at that point. So, like, if I'd had siblings, I'm pretty sure my mom would have been taking care of them.
But thankfully, she has a Robb. If she had someone who was more like Joffrey, it would have been a disaster.
Oh, yeah. Can you imagine 13-year-old Joffrey let loose in control of the Red Keep while Cersei cries over Marcella.
So I do think it needs to be noted that you did just roundabout say that Cersei is a better mother than Catelyn.
Being better than Catelyn isn't a high bar. I would also say Cersei's better than Lysa, but we'll wait till you meet Lysa for that one.
I was like, I need to meet her first. But okay, so Sansa.
A few people braced me for Sansa going in. I think you didn't necessarily brace me because you wanted me to go in organically. But when other people realized Sansa was coming up, they were like, oh, you're not going to like her. You won't bond to her until later books. Give her a chance in the later books. So I was kind of going in like, am I not going to like her? But I don't see a problem. Like, I don't understand the Sansa hate. There was nothing in her chapter that made me dislike her. Everything made sense to me about her. Despite being the daughter of Ned Stark and Catelyn, she came out well-adjusted.
Yeah, I think it's her choices later on, which we'll get to in another couple chapters. But and Arya is the fandom favorite. Like, she's the adorable, spunky tomboy, and it's just really easy. I think a lot easier for people to root for the spunky tomboy. And since Arya and Sansa fight because they're sisters who are fairly close in age, and I don't know how you avoid doing that, they just choose Arya's side. But I would like to point out that Sansa's first act in her chapter is covering for Arya with breakfast. Like, she tells their septa, oh yeah, no, she just wasn't hungry, even though she knows perfectly well Arya's been gone for hours.
Like, I was a spunky tomboy growing up. I still did not like Arya after this chapter, so I don't know, maybe I'm just unknowingly a contrarian. I don't know. Maybe. Because I was just, we'll get to it in more depth here in a moment, but I'm just like, Arya is the one that really annoyed me, but that could just be like, I don't like kids.
And this it also could be like, being in Sansa's POV, you get to see why you would be annoyed at this and the thought process behind being annoyed by her. You definitely get an eyeful of when Sansa gets cornered by being in the spotlight and Cersei sends Joffrey to rescue her. Sansa lands in the spotlight on accident and is ready to start crying and is like hiding behind her direwolf. She's really actually kind of shy and a social introvert. She doesn't like these people. They're strange. And to be fair, Ilyn Payne is indeed fucking terrifying. Probably an interesting little foreshadowing there. Thank you, George. But
I'm not gonna lie, I was really intrigued. Again, oh my gosh, maybe I don't know what's wrong with me, but when they were introducing him, I was like, I like this guy.
You're probably not wrong. Ilyn is super interesting. When you get into his backstory and stuff, he really is a really cool backstory character.
I also liked Renly during that whole thing.
Well, and I totally forgot that we meet Barristan here, and he's the first interaction we got. And then he was nice to Sansa. Like, he tries to cushion the blows for her a bit with the whole, getting between her and the crowd and kind of trying to get her out of her shell.
I like him too. Still not impressed with Clegane, and when I say that, I mean, maybe impressed is the wrong word because I like him, but I know I don't think I'm supposed to.
So. I just he was totally right in this chapter though. He has that line that the Starks use the direwolves for wet nurses. I'm like, no, seriously, those direwolves are their nurses. Like, that's the childcare for House Stark right there.
And if direwolves could climb, Bran would be fine.
I'm just picturing the direwolves as Nana now from Peter Pan.
Oh my gosh. Yep, that's who they are.
So yeah, Arya obviously is completely unprepared for court life. She's been sneaking off. And because their septa is completely useless, and I don't know how Catelyn hired this chick.
Yeah.
Arya has been successfully sneaking off. I guess Sansa's sometimes covering for her a bit, but she's sneaking off. She's playing with this peasant boy. Then Sansa and Joffrey go for a ride and end up having a pretty not date day. And then they run across Arya and her peasant boy playing fake sword sticks. And then Joffrey, who is, by the way, a tall 13-year-old, gets his ass kicked by Arya, who's 9.
Well, that is funny. It is also highly annoying. Just, I don't know. Maybe it's just who I am deep down. I'm not gonna lie. If a 9-year-old came at me with the stick, I'm gonna get hit with the stick because I'm not about to hit a 9-year-old. I know that I'm a lot more measured than a Joffrey, and I have prison to worry about. But like, I'm not about to fight back against a 9-year-old. That said, Bran's younger, and yet in Bran's chapters, we get the sense that he's an intelligent 7.
Mm-hmm.
What the hell happened with Arya? Like, I get
I
people
think
love
Arya's
her.
POV right there was she was trying to defend Micah, the butcher boy, because I mean Joffrey does have the sword pressed to Micah's face and is drawing blood, and is definitely not looking like he's gonna stop. He's bullying this little kid, and so Arya's telling him to stop and telling him to stop, and he's just making it worse. So she hits him with a stick, and
Yeah, no, that makes sense if that were not a prince.
Sansa freezes up because conflict is not Sansa's forte. So she literally is just frozen in terror. But I honestly, if you're Sansa, in her point of view, I don't see how you don't freeze up in terror because Joffrey literally has power of life and death. Even if this comes out okay, like this is still not good. She's has to marry him and be on his good side forever. Arya is her sister, who she loves and hates at the same time, you know, as sisters. And like, blood has been drawn, even though it was Micah's, and now Arya's hit Joffrey with a stick, and Joffrey's down, and then the direwolf, like, and then he's going after Arya, and so she starts running towards them, but she gets there too late, and Nymeria hits, and of course Nymeria is mauling the kid's arm, and yeah, like, it's a complete disaster, but it's sort of like a playground scuffle gone horribly wrong because one is royal and one has a gigantic direwolf.
It just comes back to if someone had been watching the freaking child. Yeah, you can blame Joffrey for being a dick, but that's Joffrey. He's a dick. But this is the Starks' fault. Like, oh, everything so far that has gone wrong with the Starks has been of the Starks' making.
Yeah, I mean, Arya and Sansa needed a better governess. You know, you're traveling, you're letting this kid run wild among strangers, which even Sansa points out is dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And Ned's not paying any attention whatsoever, apparently, or thinks it's cute and allows it. I don't know which. And because Ned sucks at this whole parenting gig.
So either's just as bad as the other. I mean,
Yeah, you know, and so he's just letting it happen because wolf blood or some junk. So instead of knowing how to defuse the situation with the prince, Arya goes for the gun, more or less. And like, no one has taught these children conflict resolution. No one's taught these kids how to act around royalty. No one's actually been supervising them whatsoever.
Yeah, and let me make myself clear. I'm not victim blaming. I'm not saying like it's Arya's fault that she defended herself and her friend. But I am
blaming the adults.
I'm blaming the adults because, like I said, Joffrey's a dick. He's always going to be a dick. There's no excuse for how he acts. But again, he's a prince who, as you said, has power of life and death. He's going to be a brat because he's been allowed to be a brat. That's a separate issue. But Arya had, I mean, again, she's 9, so the ability to look into the future and consider consequences is quite limited. It is the Stark's fault that Arya is the way she is. And if I were Ned, she would be going home the next day. Like, I love my daughter, but she will get someone killed, and we need to repair whatever's going to happen between Sansa and Joffrey because clearly that has been damaged. So Arya's going home.
I mean, that sounds like a logical reaction. Obviously, this child is too feral for court.
And it also shows the Lannisters that you're willing to punish your child. Because court, to most of them, would seem like a boon. Because then that means your marriage prospects go up because more of the higher-ups go through court.
I mean, obviously it wouldn't have been a punishment for Arya. She doesn't like that setting.
But the Lannisters would not have seen it that way. They would have seen it as, good, he is taking steps to make this right. He is punishing the brat. We can trust him.
Yeah. And of course, in next episode, we will be getting into the fallout from the oh no's. Because next episode, we'll be doing Eddard 3, Bran 3, and Catelyn 4.
Oh my god, all of my favorites.
Now, if you thought we were too hard on Cat or Ned or any of the Starks, please let us know down in the comments. We are obviously not the be-all end-all of a Game of Thrones, and our opinions are not set in stone. Honestly, as the noob, I wouldn't mind having my eyes open to new perspectives here. Also, if you have any questions about previous chapters or upcoming chapters, let us hear from you. So, before we go, we do want to take a moment to thank everyone who voted in the Evernight Publication Reader's Choice Book of the Year. Allegra and I were beyond shocked to even be nominated, let alone be runners-up for Book of the Year and Best MC Novel of the Year. We are so humbled and very grateful. If you've read our book, thank you so much for supporting us. If you haven't and you're looking for a steamy romance to add to your library, you can purchase a digital copy at Evernight's website or wherever ebooks are sold. If you're like me and prefer print, those are available on Amazon. Links will be posted down in the description. That said, thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, hit that bell for notifications for new videos. Also, feel free to follow Allegra and me on Twitter, Instagram, and our Facebook page, Two Lit Chicks. Look forward to hearing from you, and as always, have a wonderful day.